Hey, it's Mirna from Trainer's Toolbox. Welcome to the Trainer's Toolbox podcast, a place where you can discover practical and effective tools and tips to make your workshops more insightful, engaging, and memorable. You are at the right place if you're looking to become the best trainer you can be and design truly impactful learning experiences. Ready? Let's dive in. Hello. Thank you for joining me today on the episode in which we explore building your bolder vision as a facilitator or a coach or a trainer. And I'm really excited to have our first guest on Trainer's Toolbox podcast, which is Paula. I invited Paula today because there is a lot I admire at her. And we are a bit of a LinkedIn buddies and looking at each other work there. And there are many ideas that I think are really valuable that she keeps sharing that I wanted to bring into the Trainer's Toolbox space as well. So Paula Amiyama is creativity and embodiment coach. She had a bit of a wildly non-linear career, switching between marketing, sustainability, working with innovation, working in L&D, only to finally step into her today's career of coaching and training business with her Unlearn Studios, where she's primarily supporting artists and creatives, guess with what? With building their boldest vision and bringing it to life. So as us trainers and facilitators are very much creatives as well, we definitely want to pick up any tips and ideas of how can we bring our own boldest vision to life. So Paula, one of the reasons why I invited you today is because when I see your work and life and everything you do, I really see this quality of groundedness and spaciousness and your deep listening of yourself. And I feel like that's a quality that in today's world we miss so much, also as trainers and facilitators, also as everyone. And I love to see how for you it really works together with also depth and momentum in your work. So it's not just like, oh, I'm so grounded, feeling so good, nothing is happening, but there is really this sense of deep being moved from inside, but then moving ahead and creating things in the world. And I do feel that's very connected to our topic today. So I'm very curious what you can share with us about creating our vision as a facilitators in our work and in our life. But let's start from basics. What would you say? What is vision for you really? Why do we want to have a vision as trainers or facilitators?
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for, letting me talk about one of my favorite topics. So, vision for me is really about deep listening. You mentioned that about my work, but I really truly believe that it's a way to listen to a part of yourself that always knows. It always knows where to go. And often it knows what you want most deep down. And so it's about getting really clear signal from yourself around what is it that I want to bring to life next. And vision is not, sometimes it's often confused with having a plan or a strategy. And it's important that we differentiate the two. So for me, vision is more orientation first. It's
Okay.
almost like you're picking like the mountain that you want to climb. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're a hiker, I know you're into nature, so it's almost like saying, okay, that's the mountain that I'm going to pick. And sometimes it's not even a mountain that exists. Sometimes it's about imagining a completely new mountain for yourself. But it's saying, okay, that's the orientation, that's the direction. And we are not yet sure how we're going to get there. We're not yet strategizing about the best path forward, the best route, the best equipment we need on our journey, right? So we're not getting into the how yet, but and that's important. And of course, it's really important to blend the different layers so we can actually get to the mountain. But we don't start with the plan. We start with picking our mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Then we can actually have the best plan. And we also don't start with the how because we might dilute the vision.
Mm-hmm. Or get
Um,
scared.
or get scared, get in our heads about what we can and cannot do. And so we first say, hey, that's the direction. And then we sort out the rest. But
So kind
having
of
that clarity first.
So kind of thinking very big and dreamy and not necessarily tangible, but more like really envisioning what is next in a way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that requires, I mean, we're going to talk a lot about our
Mhm.
process, but it requires that we get outside of all the the limitations of the how first, so that we can really then
Mm.
actually, again, listen. What is it that I would love? And sometimes bold doesn't mean big, right?
Mm.
We also think, oh, we have to climb the biggest mountain.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's simply being really honest.
Yeah, I was just
What is
thinking the
the,
same word, honesty and like being authentic in it and really
yeah,
owning what we want to create.
maybe it's not even a mountain. Maybe it's actually a little cave or a different path, whatever it is. But it's simply saying, hey, this is what's me. This is what I want to go.
Mm.
That's what I want to strive to move towards.
Cool. I'm curious, do you give it a timeline when you think about it like that?
Oh, timelines are
Tricky.
are tricky. They can help. They can help. And so sometimes I do introduce them in my work just to give folks a chance to imagine something
Mm.
different. And often I actually like to think about a longer timeline,
Yep.
something even like 1 or 2 years ahead, just for people to think actually a lot of things could be possible. And again, to
Mm.
get out of the head around feasibility. Having said that, sometimes this actually can be the opposite effect, because we can then start limiting ourselves
Yeah.
based on the timeline.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
I actually really believe that vision is really best when we strip the timeline to a certain degree,
Interesting. Okay. Okay.
which I know it's maybe counterintuitive, especially around the corporate world, especially if you think about, okay, we have our 5-year vision,
Mm.
where, we need to get there by a certain time. But when it comes to our own lives, there's, again, say you really dream about climbing Everest.
Mm. Mm.
And it might take you 1 year to train. It might take you 5, but it doesn't mean that you stop dreaming
Yeah.
about the Everest, or because maybe your life took some turns that you don't continue pursuing that path.
Yeah.
So I think it can help in certain contexts, but it can help
Hmm.
actually more when we start planning to put some timelines.
Yeah.
When we're
Makes sense.
visioning what we would love, it can be more freeing actually to think, hey, anything's possible in whatever timeline it might want to come into my life. That
Yeah. Okay. Can I share my take on timelines with vision?
please
Because
do.
I'm thinking one of the messages we want to transfer today is also there's so many ways of doing things, and we want to share ideas and perspectives, and not necessarily the step-by-step process, but more like how can we go about it. So for me, when I work with others on their vision, it actually really helps to have a timeline.
Mhm.
But it can be very individual what some timeline means for
Yeah.
someone, based on where they are in life and based on in general how much they're futuristic or thinking big or not. So I like to ask them to choose a timeline,
Mm.
but very often I do give as sort of a rule of thumb that my advice is not to take one that's less than a year, because I feel then it's limitations and fears, and we think too small. And it's usually good rule of thumb is like 3 or 5 years,
Mhm.
because that feels somehow, it feels tangible enough, it's close enough, yet it's so long chunk of time and it's so far that we don't feel threatened by that vision yet. Like my experience is that 10 years, very few people can do. More than 10, even less. But somehow giving that timeline, I think, also matches it to what is the seasons in your life in terms of your lifespan.
Yeah.
That, like, if I'm in early 20s and I give it 5 years, or if I'm in early 30s or early 40s or whatever age, I give it 5 years, it's going to practically take me to a different stage of my life.
Mm.
And I think that's good to be aware, because for me, one of the traps of the vision can be that I'm dreaming something that I want now, and that's going to take me 5 years to achieve. And then by the time I get there, I'm a different person. So I think
Yeah.
taking that into account can be really, really helpful. But I think
Yeah.
ultimately it's about that limitation from overthinking, limitation from being too strict about what I'm trying to write or design or imagine.
Yeah. 100%. And I would agree that also when you're facilitating someone else, it's also really important to see what their
Yeah.
preferences are, rather than me, what my preferences are for my
Yeah.
own envisioning. It's like what actually would help them and
Yes.
being of service. I think that's really important. I will mention one of the actually really helpful exercises I did, I guess back in university, but I've done it a couple of times since. And it's a writing exercise where you actually envision what your life looks like a year, 5 years, and 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
You have actually different
Yeah.
timelines. And it helps to see, because there you're not also saying, oh, I have this job or in this company or this
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. You're actually really kind of going through your day almost as if somebody were to film you, and really just
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
describing how your time flows through that day at different points in your life. And what's really beautiful about it is that you also start seeing the similarities, some of the things that keep
Yeah.
coming back, no matter which timeline you're looking at. But it's true that just
Yeah.
anchoring at different points can just serve to open up possibilities. So
Yeah.
I think that's the key part. It's like, how can you keep possibilities as open as possible?
Yes.
And whatever
But
serves you in doing that.
yes, yes, but that you're also invested and
Yeah.
relating to it. That it's not like, oh, in 20 years, it's so like I'll just brainstorm randomly, but to really connect with that place inside. So I'm really, really curious, how do you guide people, creatives, facilitators, whoever, through their vision? Or vision design would be maybe or what would be the word? You give me the word. Vision design or vision creation or vision building. How do you guide them? And what would also be your related tips? If I sit down as a facilitator, I work on my own vision, what can you advise me or share as a best practice?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things, whether it's in my one-on-one coaching containers or in group formats that I hold, or even we do sometimes as a community in some of the programs I hold, I basically, I personally really enjoy doing meditative and visual, like internal visualization practices. So I often guide folks through a real imagination exercise that they go through. They can deep dive and really connect with that part of themselves that's allowed to dream really fully. But before we get into that meditative space where we then really can imagine, we often do some form of clearing process where we identify any form of fear or shame or ideas we have around what's realistic or even appropriate or strategic or marketable, like all the things that we get in our head about, is this possible or not possible? Am I allowed to do this, not allowed to do this? Am I able? Or what would happen? What's the cost of doing things? Like we have a lot of stories. So we do a little bit of a clearing first so we can actually put aside all those ideas for a moment. It doesn't mean that we don't get to, pick up some of the reasonable assumptions later in our planning. But for the dreaming part, it's important that we put aside all of those. And then we get into that meditative state as a stage 2, and we really allow ourselves to dream. I personally like to use these kinds of more meditative tools. At the same time, I feel like it's not always for everyone. And so I have a few tools, and that's what also I would advise, to have a few tools in your toolbox, depending on what kind of environment you're facilitating in or your own preferences if you're working on your own vision. So it might be more visual tools, like you might actually like to collage and use pictures. You might enjoy writing and describing a type of vision, right? And so I just mentioned the writing and journaling exercise, where you're just really using your words. You might, again, get into more meditative stage. You might also just want to even express in movement or other forms of expression. So there's no one right way to do it. I think it's important to have, again, a few different tools, know your own preferences for yourself to envision, but also know what are your strengths as a facilitator if you're doing that for other people.
Okay, now you made me very curious because I'm thinking like I really like journaling as for these kind of setups. I really like writing. I don't like visual methods and visualizations so much.
Okay.
I don't know why. It's like I don't have anything against them, but the results I get from writing I feel are more effective. And I keep wondering also in terms of my own, development and insights, Is it good to stick with your preferred style? And like this is
Mhm.
my strength, this is my power, this is how I'm doing it. So it really works for me. I really enjoy it. I'll always do it like this. Or how much is there value in exposure to other styles and things? Are they a complementary thing? Are they a thing we should experiment with and then maybe come back to our preference, maybe enrich it a bit? How would you go about it?
Oof, that is a
Million
beautiful,
dollar question.
beautiful and complex question because at the end of the day, yes, of course, we can benefit from getting exposed to different tools and different mechanisms. And even if you don't feel like you are necessarily um, maybe good or you don't get results from a certain experience, doesn't mean that you won't if you practice it, right? Just like some
Mhm.
people say, oh, I don't know, I don't enjoy meditating, I can't get into it, that's not my thing. But actually, after practicing or using a different technique or a different teacher, you will
Mhm.
actually have really great results. And I've experienced that with visualizations as well. I've
Mhm.
personally been quite a visual person, and that's why my preference has led me down the path of, pursuing those kinds of
Mhm.
experiences. But I've also heard again and again from teachers in those spaces where folks that maybe don't feel like they have an internal visual mind, by practicing that, they can really develop that inner
Mhm.
imaging sense. But again, I have no problem whatsoever with folks leaning towards their strengths and their preferences. I think it's both and,
Yeah.
it's yes, let's get exposed to other things that might inspire us and maybe try new ways of approaching something that we've dismissed in the past,
Mhm. Mhm.
and also lean into the tools that we have that work for us. uh,
Mm.
Use those too, right? So maybe it's an 80-20 approach where you're primarily using the tools that really work, but also getting some exposure to others.
Oh, I like that as a 80, because when you said we should still do both, I'm kind of like, oh, that's 50-50. Then I have to push myself a bit. But 80-20 sounds comfortable enough, but innovative enough, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
I also just remembered of an amazing book for me as a facilitator for thinking of visualizations and where
Mhm.
is their place and how to do them well. I don't know if you know the book Visualize by Maya Ranchura. I don't know how to pronounce her name, Ranchura,
Oh,
Ranchora, something like that. We will add the link also in the show notes.
no, but
Um,
I'm putting it in my
it's a really good book, and I only read it because, as I told you, it's not my preferred tool,
yeah.
visualizations. But then a friend who loves them, she was like, "You need to read this book. You need to read this book." So
Mhm.
I went for it, and in my mind, it's even more book about mindset, but it
Mhm.
also talks about visualization in much more kind of goal-oriented way. Like, what purpose do you want to achieve, and how can you use visualization within, like, for yourself or even more for others? So I really found it very well
Mhm.
structured, valuable, not very long.
Yeah,
All the
great.
good things in a book.
Mhm.
Cool. So you mentioned one thing that was really about letting go also, fears and, well, some of the beliefs, maybe
Mhm.
limitations. And I feel like that's one topic that is really not spoken enough about, that for your vision and to actually build something and to imagine what you want to have. It's not so much about saying what you want, it's also very much about liberating ourselves from all the
Yeah.
noise and from all the things we don't need and want and that are not a priority. I always like to think of that quote. We actually talked about it once. I think it's from Elizabeth Gilbert, is it?
Mhm.
About how she said to her mentor, now I'm totally misquoting her, but like how she said to her mentor when she decided to go for writing and really put full effort in creating career as a writer, how her mentor says, oh, that will require strong boundaries and to say no to many things.
Mhm.
And she said, yeah, I know, I'll have to say no to everything I don't want to do. And her mentor was like, no, no, no. You'll have to say no to everything you want to do. So you could actually do writing instead. I found that so like spot on, that it's not just about clearing the space from things that are that we don't want. That sounds difficult, but that's the easy part. But also to really choose those priorities by clearing the space
Mhm.
from everything else. I'm really curious on your take on letting go. I feel like that's a bit of your strength as well, at least in the way you communicate. So I'm very curious to hear your take.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. And yeah, I mean, I one of my favorite topics to chat about, I've named my whole company Unlearn Studios. And learn for me is really, it's really that process of letting go of all the things that we've learned over our whole lifetime that simply no longer serve us. And to be honest, absolutely anything, any idea, any thought, any belief, even any value or identity that is holding us back from that thing that we want to envision, that thing that we want to birth into our life next, is something to question and to let go of and to unlearn. And so for me, letting go, shedding, releasing, clearing, all of that is the absolute first step for our creative process. And as you know, Rina, I work with the different seasons as sort of my model for working through the creative process. And letting go is really that fall season. If you look at anything in nature, we have usual periods where we shed, the trees let go of their leaves. We are becoming, a lot lighter during the process of shedding. Like you said, sometimes it might be around setting boundaries about things that you want to say no to, things that you want to say yes to, but you simply are saying, hey, not right now, or not during this time. But it can be anything. It's simply basically creating spaciousness for whatever is to come. And we all need that spaciousness to create something new. You can create something new when your cup is completely full of all ideas, all clutter. I mean, even one of the very first rituals that we do in our program is actually declutter your spaces. Real physical decluttering. That's not my strength, by the way. It's not an area where I'm like, oh, naturally I tend to declutter. But when I actually spend a couple of hours clearing out physical space, it actually creates a lot of inner space as well. When we spend time questioning all ideas or beliefs around what's possible, or letting go of, I don't know, ideas of what you're allowed or not allowed to do, you all of a sudden have way more energy for what's to come. So clearing and making space and letting go can come in all different shapes and sizes around different parts of your life. But all of it, I mean, I have never gone through an experience of letting go of something where I have regretted it.
Very nice.
Where I have thought, oh, that was not a good use of my time. And yet, when we think about the corporate world or in our organizations or in our businesses, we're not spending enough time in this season. We don't value this season enough. We are always thinking about, what can I add? What more thing? What's the next big, brighter thing? We want the good and the bold ideas. We want to be the best. We want to innovate. We want all those things, but we're never questioning, what do we need to release? What do we need to kill and let die so that the next new fresh thing can come into place?
And I love that framing, the framing of I'm building spaciousness, because I feel like when we talk about letting go, then it's kind of like this loss orientation. And maybe that's okay as well, because you maybe want to acknowledge also there might be sense of loss, sense of grief, and like time needed to process things. But to me, whenever we say let go, I feel like, like I have to squeeze in those projects or ideas or out of the door, I feel like I have to push something away. And that doesn't always, it feels like a struggle, But when I think of this idea of creating spaciousness, of nourishing the space, that's completely different, frame and way of being in that space and intention behind it. I think it's much more calming and nourishing in a way.
100%. And that's also where boundaries come in, actually, in protecting that space. Because it's very difficult sometimes in our very productivity hungry world to right away, as soon as we make a little bit of space, we fill it. Like we're very not practiced in holding space. Even think about when you clear something in your calendar. Like I don't know, maybe you cancel a meeting, or I don't know, something else just magically gets canceled and you're like, sweet, space. And then we fill it right away.
I'm laughing knowingly.
Yeah, and we're we're not able to hold it and to say, hey, what if instead I actually keep that empty? What would I love to do in that space? What is it that actually is a priority that's aligned with my vision? Or what if I actually really leave it blank without an agenda so that I
Mm,
actually have more energy for the things? And so we can even talk about that too, but the next stage after fall is winter. And that's
mm,
the one that gets skipped the most out of all of it. Because that's once you've done the clearing, it's like, okay, can I hold stillness? Can I hold
mm,
pause? Can I allow for all that, all that shedding that I've done? Sometimes it's like whole identities that I've let go of.
mm.
And all of a sudden, it feels very vulnerable in our own bodies to even
Yeah,
hold the space because you're like, well, if I'm not that, then who am I? Right?
yeah.
And so it's really important to say, hey, no, I need to remain sensitive. I need to remain, it's almost like being in the cocoon of the caterpillar. Maybe I know that's an overused metaphor, but oftentimes it's like, okay, the caterpillar is no longer there. We've let
Mm,
go of the caterpillar, but now we're going into the cocoon, and the cocoon is so important. It looks like nothing's happening from the
mm,
outside. It looks like stillness, but inside there's so much going on. The caterpillar goes into a full goop, a soup of caterpillar.
mm.
That's all happening internally. And that happens to us as well, where we go through a process where it's all internally happening, and we need to hold that cocoon. And from that place, that's where the vision emerges. When we're
Mm,
able to tune in, to not numb out that stillness, to not fill it with space,
mm.
just simply hold. It's almost like we're building our stamina for holding space.
The
And
patience. Yeah.
yeah, the patience and the sensitivity and all of it that sometimes feels really uncomfortable. But from that place, that's where we actually feel like, hey, that's what I want. That's who
Mm.
I am.
I like to think about it as this feeling of winter morning when it's first snow, when you kind of come out and it's like this ultimate silence, a different kind of silence. I think when you really get to winter, that's the feeling. But for
Yeah.
me personally, very often I feel like, the moment I pause for 5 minutes, I'm like, oh, okay, winter. But that's not there yet. There are layers, there are depths to it. But I actually did a whole episode on kind of going through the seasons as a framework in the podcast episode recently, like 25. And I
Mhm.
feel like that's a framework that's not a framework that's very rare. Like I encountered it in different embodiment courses. I also use it in the treehouse, the
Mhm.
retreat. We also discuss it sometimes in trainers' conversations in the community. I feel like it's a very versatile framework we can use for a lot of different things, including the vision. And I think it's very practical because it really, people have a feel for seasons. It's not just the
Yeah.
story, it's really the something we can feel in the body. But I do have to say, being in one of your webinars where you're working with seasons, I do feel you have a superpower to bring this framework to a whole new level. So I want to ask you, what is your secret to work with seasons? Not even necessarily to go into specific ones, but more like overall, when you think working with someone to move them through these different stages, to guide them through spring, that's all this blossoming in action, through the summer, which is like sustaining momentum in action, through that fall, letting go, through the winter, kind of recharging and kind of also building that vision quietly. When you guide them through that, first of all, what do you keep in mind, maybe? But also, what would be good for us? Let's say I want to think of seasons in my own life or in my work. What would be your tips?
That is beautiful. Yeah, thanks. Also, yeah, I know it's one of those things that yeah resonates with people. I think every single time I've done a workshop or something on seasons, it resonates because people understand the language of
Mm,
it, and so that they can relate to the different periods. And for me, what has been a huge game changer, and I think it's so valuable for all of us to keep in mind, no matter in which context you're using this,
mhm.
is to really appreciate each one. And I
Okay.
know it sounds like almost like, yeah, okay, sure, but it's crazy how many of us resist going
Mhm.
particular season.
Or rush.
Yeah, or just want to rush. And for I see it again and again, the seasons of fall and winter, for example, for me, those are the seasons of really being in ourselves before we move into the very doing seasons of spring and summer. Those are very active seasons. And so there's some context, like in the corporate or business world, we don't appreciate those being seasons. We really appreciate the productive spring and summer seasons. So we undervalue, and therefore we're very skewed in how we organize our activities around way more weight on the spring and summer. But I also have been in other spaces where actually people are very well versed in that winter pleasure pause, like that really yummy in between space, and yet they're very much resisting the active seasons. They don't want to move forward in action. So I think what's really important is to know, hey, like me, myself, or not me, myself, but like you as a facilitator, as a person, might be going through a particular season, and to fully appreciate where you are, not where everyone else is, or even where, by the way, where the natural seasons are. Maybe where you feel like you're in winter, and that's okay. So really actually acknowledging and embracing where you are right now, but also not resisting the next season that you're ready for. I've been, I don't know, probably my whole life operating very much in a spring summer mode. And then when I started reconnecting with my body and with a lot of different tools, I started falling in love with the more being of fall and winter. And what happens then, I started resisting summer, for example, again. Because
because it was overstretched.
Yeah, I associated with burnout. I associated with overstretching, overworking, overgiving. And yet there's nothing inherently wrong about summer, right? Summer, it can be wonderful when you're ready to step into it, when your ideas are ready to grow and visible and scale in the world. And so my biggest, let's say, tip or learning from this whole experience is that every season is important. Every season has something to offer, and we need to really embrace where we are in our own journey without comparison, and really not be afraid of any one season. We just need to understand how do we relate to it in a healthy way.
I love that. And not just to recognize it's needed, but to actually appreciate and savor the gifts of that season.
The gifts, exactly. Every season, and think about the natural world, every season has gifts. And so in our own journey, and especially in our own creative becoming, there's going to be gifts for every season.
I'm curious on seasons, on your thoughts on one more thing, and that's a while back, I think it was winter maybe, I had this period when there was this big misalignment between seasons in my life. And here's what happened. Naturally, I'm like super spring, ideas, let's do things, action, always something new, maybe a bit of summer, but like spring, very like strong drive. On the other hand, in my energy and in general in life, I really felt the need for winter. So I really like, I need some space. I need to disconnect more, I need to move away. And then in my business, because I work with two brands, right? Trainers Toolbox for trainers and facilitators, and with Happiness Academy with positive psychology. So in Trainers Toolbox, it was full-blown summer. I was like at this stage when there was too much going on, and I wanted to strengthen the systems, sustain the momentum, really like clear things out while they were, so they would be more targeted, and like a lot of this very, very summer. And Happiness Academy was in the fall. Because I was like, as I was strengthening Trainers Toolbox, I was like, okay, Happiness Academy, I need to let some things go there. I need to pause them a bit to actually focus on sorting this out. So like all in different ways. And honestly, like having two in different phases, I think it's normal. Like external season being different than yours, or maybe your preference versus whatever the stage of your business or life is. But having four different ones really felt like, what am I doing here? What is going? Now they got a bit aligned, thank you God. But I'm very curious, what do you do, or how do you go about having these, how would I call it, maybe incongruences of seasons in different aspects of your life?
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it happens in both. And I think both are actually very uncomfortable for people. Either where you have this incongruence or this kind of exactly what you described, having four different seasons, different areas of your life. I also see it, by the way, where people get really uncomfortable, where all of a sudden all their life is in one season.
Ah, fair
So, for
enough.
example, if they're going through winter, yeah, and they all of a sudden be like, I don't know who I am anymore in any area of my life. Like maybe I'm in between relationships, between countries, between jobs, between this, and they're like completely lost at sea, right? Because they let go of all the old identities and roles, and all of a sudden they haven't stepped into the next thing. And so that in between, so it can be actually potentially uncomfortable in whichever way it comes into your life. I would say whatever it is there, we need to work on acceptance. And I think that's not necessarily, that can be frustrating for folks and they're like, I don't like what's the reality. But I think the deepest thing to do is just to accept the reality for what it is, to really have so much compassion for saying, yes, I am in winter here and I am in summer here. And these different parts of my life have lives of their own. Like also what I'm building, like your business in one part of your business has a life of its own.
Yeah.
And so it's natural that it's gonna flow. And almost on one hand, you have your own season internally, but you're also the orchestrator of a garden. And each of the plants might be undergoing different seasons. And so you're stewarding and you're curating and you're nurturing depending on what each project or life area needs. And so I think it's about just deep acceptance and love for what's emerging at each part of your life. And sometimes again they coincide and that feels beautiful. Sometimes they coincide, it doesn't feel beautiful. Sometimes, but it's all okay. And resisting, that's what actually brings us more trouble, because we're not just experiencing the initial discomfort. A lot of this discomfort or suffering that comes is actually of all the stories we tell. This is wrong.
Yeah.
Why are we all in different seasons? The actual stories and overthinking about that it should be differently. That's what's something that we can work on.
Yeah, I think for me, challenge there is more like to keep showing up in a season that your business is in and that it needs, when your own personal season is a bit different. And I find maybe a solution to that in sort of mini cycles, within a day, within a week, when you give attention to it. But still, that's different than saying, hey, I'm in winter now and I'm just protecting that space and everything stays out and, leave the garden and whatnot. And I think it's a very thin balance, but that's maybe more already in the direction of boundaries. I think once in the future, we have to come back to that topic as well. But there was one more thing I really wanted to hear your thoughts on.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they're also your superpower and I recognize them a lot in your work. And we are already way into our planned time. So we still have time to work out one topic maybe, but not to over...
not open another floodgate.
Yeah, not to go into spring. But yeah, the topic I have in mind is this. I feel like maybe to start from where it's coming up for me, like when I work with people more in this side of positive psychology, like anything about their mindset, anything about their life, anything about their well-being, happiness, but also goals. I feel like the most undervalued thing that people continuously miss to do, and that is the biggest value I try to also provide, is this invitation to manage your state and yourself and your energy or your emotion before you manage the problem, the goal, or whatnot. And I think we have different vocabulary how we think about it, but I think we very much operate in a similar way. This, like, if I have a decision that's stressing me and I need to make it, that is not the optimal state for me to make that decision. So unless that decision is I'm on highway and I need to act immediately, my first go-to is, okay, I need to change this state, because then only that I can deal with that decision in an optimal way, right? So kind of down that line of being versus doing, how do I want to, how am I showing up in things versus what are my actions? And I feel like that's really undervalued, maybe not in theory, but in actions and in the way that people show up. And I know you have a lot of thoughts on that. And I'm very curious, especially from perspective, also, what are your tips on to do more being, less doing, and to be more aware of that aspect? But also, what do you feel is the shift that happens when we operate more from that place?
Mm, mm, yeah. Wow. Yeah. And I love that you also reference that we have different language for it in different fields or environments. You come from that positive psychology side, you're going to have your language for it. I feel like now the whole topic of, nervous system regulation in general is so talked about, and becoming more and more mainstream to talk about how do we regulate our nervous system. I often talk about it in the with the language of getting into the body, and the body, not because our brain is part of the body, and so I value my brain highly, but it's also about what else is there, what more of me is available when I land fully within myself, when I'm not numbing or disconnecting from self. And so for me, that preparation or regulation of your own state is about coming back to center. It's about coming back to, some people call it, I mean, if we really go down the layers, some people call it, higher self or wiser self or core self. It really depends. Some people call it no self if you're more into the non-dual spiritual side, where it's like we're not even, the whole being of the self is an illusion. But it's basically, it's getting rid of, or not getting rid of, it's dissolving all the layers that are noise. All the layers that are simply, like static or stories or overstimulation, and coming back to neutrality, to wisdom, again, to the body. For me, what has been super, super helpful, super, like, I cannot tell you how helpful it has been, is really movement practices. And I've meditated in different forms throughout my whole life, but meditation in the way that I knew it traditionally was always around almost like, oh, there's a thought like a cloud, and then I'm just going to let it pass and let it out. And so it was always about almost getting rid of thoughts, or somehow, moving them out of my system. And what this more feminine approach to meditation taught me was that actually when we experience something, whether it's an emotion or a thought or anything that we're experiencing that it comes with tension or with distraction, or something that's trying to call for us to be like, hey, over here, instead of saying, hey, move out, we're actually doing the polar opposite with this type of movement meditation, where we're inviting it in to be processed. So let's say, to give a really practical example, I don't know, I'm feeling really anxious before giving a talk.
Maybe we can actually put it in the context of the vision as well.
Yeah,
Let's say
sure.
I feel very non-clear about my vision. I'm confused.
Exactly. I'm confused. I'm lost at sea. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know which mountain to pick. Yeah. And so I get really afraid. Like, I'm like, oh, maybe I start getting in my head, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not good enough to even have a vision. Do I need a vision? Oh, but if I don't have, they're all the thoughts that come up. Or I kind of want to go there, but I don't think I will ever have the tools or the skills or the time or the money or, whatever. So we start overthinking, we start getting really anxious. And so instead of saying, hey, those thoughts don't matter, those emotions don't matter, we're actually going to embrace them and move through them and let them be processed and pass through us. So it's almost around completing an emotion. It's not a sense of that. It's not about we want to maximize it and only live in anxiety. It's more that we want that to complete. We want that emotion to also be heard,
Expressed.
to be expressed, to also tell us, what is it trying to teach us? What is it trying to voice out? If there's something that we haven't heard, and just it's a part of us that needs a little bit of love, attention, and care, almost like a child that's saying, hey, I'm afraid. And so again, with movement and getting into our bodies, we can let that pass naturally. We can use that to, again, to hear that more closely. And then what happens, and I've experienced it in almost every coaching session that I've had, is that people just feel, when they allow that to be experienced, to be welcomed, and then to pass, they all of a sudden feel an incredible, incredible deep calmness that they haven't experienced before. Sometimes we do need to move through a few layers, because maybe underneath that anxiety, there's another one, and there's maybe some shame or some other topics that we need to clear. But again, if you start taking them as something that's really there for a reason, there to protect you, there because of something you've experienced at some point in your life, and you actually treat it with care, then you allow it to kind of step aside in a very gentle way. And then you just experience calmness. And this sounds like maybe a complicated process, but I can tell you, I do that before even my coaching sessions for myself. So I'll do, like, even in sometimes as short as, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes, I'll go in to myself and I'll actually see, okay, I hear all these different voices of anxiety or agendas or things that I want to do to prove my value or whatever. I hear them, I welcome them, and then I say, okay, now what else is behind that? What's behind those curtains? What's beneath it all? And then I connect with the part of me that doesn't have an agenda, that doesn't have fear, that doesn't have all these things that it needs to prove, or the people it wants to please, or all this, all this baggage. And that part is calm. It's curious, there to be present.
And I guess the more often you look for it, the easier it is to find it, even though it's never permanent. Now it's never like, oh, you found that place, now I'm a calm person. And it's always this coming back to that place. But I think the more we reconnect with it, the more achievable that place is, the more reachable it becomes.
It's 100% a practice, right? Like anything that we want to get better at. But I think it's also something that it's not about, oh, we need to always be in 1% improvement and it's also about having deep acceptance, again, saying, hey, today was a hard one to let go of my anxiety. Hey, it was there showing up really strongly. Maybe I do need a longer practice this evening. Really clear more space for tomorrow.
Yeah, to actually hear those messages. Yeah, love that. Oh my God, so much to unpack. I think even though we started with our topic of vision, and all of this is very related, and it's holding that space for that vision to emerge, I feel like in the end, it's like more about self-management as well, and how do you deal with the things in life, and with energy, with the ways of being, with coming back to ourselves. Because ultimately we can only hold that space for others if we can hold it for ourselves as well. And that's one part I think we cannot and should not forget. I think there is so much more to learn from you. So tell me, where else can people find you, where they can learn from you? What are the best places to discover more?
Yeah, sure. So if anyone listening connects with any of these ideas about unlearning, about getting out of your own way, so again, that creative vision can come to life, I do write a newsletter. It's a Substack. It's called Unlearned Letters. So that's where I write my reflections, my experiences. Usually there's some sort of theme around what idea is quite common held among creatives that maybe we can reconsider or question. So that's one place that's free. And, I often there share also some free workshops or things that are coming up. So if you just want to get a little taste of my work. And yeah, and basically all my offers in terms of group coaching and cohorts and all the seasonal process that I've been talking about right now, it's all being homed under the umbrella of Artful Club. So this is my new community. It's primarily for women that are birthing bold ideas, that are bringing to life their most meaningful work. So we do like this seasonal approach to creativity, to birthing a creative vision, but we also have all kinds of support in the community to make that really like a really alive practice, and not just one based on pressure and pure discipline, but really make it a delicious and embodied creative experience. So if anyone wants to learn more, I'm sure you can link it in.
Yeah, we're going to link it in the episode description. We can also link a little summary of this episode that people can download, and we can add the links there as well. Because ultimately this is not a thing you learn once and then you're done. It's like you said, it's a practice, same as meditation or exercise. It's something to keep coming back to.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful.
Cool. Thank you so much. I will also say people should keep an eye on your LinkedIn.
That's enough. Yeah, if any listeners are on LinkedIn, I'm there just like Mirna, and we always like to share all our tips or upcoming workshops and things there. So definitely have a look at our profiles.
Cool. And then the last question for you today is, if you had the chance to give just one tip to facilitators out there, unfortunately, we cannot know who's listening, trainers, facilitators of any kind of experience, background, and you could invite them in just one practice, idea, tool, change, what would you invite them to implement more, to think about more?
Yeah, so I would invite anyone listening to, a little bit to reiterate the point of the whole session, but to really put in your toolbox a combination of things around unlearning, undoing, clearing space. So whether it's through journaling, meditating, or any kind of process that you have in your toolbox, to think about anything that's about letting go and creating that spaciousness for being first. And then to add any of the tools to actually create vision. So it could be, we talked about journaling, we talked about maybe you're more visual and you like collaging, maybe you like, I don't know, meditation or expressive experiences that are happening internally. Maybe it's through conversation if you're in like doing a facilitated experience with people talking to other people. But basically there's one that's an undoing first, then there's a doing, a creative, active part. And to really become more balanced in bringing a few different tools for each of those practices. Because I guarantee you that the creative part will become so much more alive and so much more genuine and authentic when you incorporate a bit of the undoing first.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Thank you for joining me today. I think whoever wants to explore more, you can also check the episodes 25, which was about the four seasons framework, diving in deeper into that one. And then episode 19, which was, I think 19, which was about self-check-in, one of the exercises to manage our state, our energy better. I think it can be some additional valuable tools. Thank you so much for joining me today, Paula, for doing the first guest podcast episode. See you in online world. Enjoy your holidays. I know you're taking the last moments before holidays to record this. Thank you so much for that. And I hope we plan another episode in the future. Let's see what emerges in terms of the topics, energy, and ideas. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for exploring this topic with me. I hope you found some exciting ideas and valuable tools that you will use already today. Remember, they only work if you put them in practice. But then they make all the difference. If you enjoyed Trainer's Toolbox podcast, do leave a rating and review. It does mean a lot. And if you haven't done it yet, Click on the links in the episode descriptions and discover free materials and valuable resources to dive in deeper. See you in the next episode or at Trainers Toolbox newsletter.